Okay, welcome everybody back to Steve Talks Boxing X, STBX. This week we are talking about this middleweight clash in this little cracker of a fight, which is Hamzah Sheeraz versus Liam Williams, which is live on TNT Sports also. And I'm pleased to say joining me this week is Chris Wardrope. Welcome, Chris, back to the show.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be back.
Yeah, great having you on again. Going to get straight into it. First question to you, Chris. At 24 years old, is Sheeraz in the good place career progression-wise at the moment?
You've got to say yes. He's headlining a BT show and, or should I say TNT show
TNT
now. And and he's headlining at the Copper Box Arena in London, managed well by Frank Warren. And he's fighting a name in Liam Williams. And I think timing's everything in this sport. And I think that Frank and Hamzah Sheeraz's team have probably managed to pick the right opponent at the right time. It's someone who I believe can make Hamzah Sheeraz look very, very good. He is a very capable fighter. And, a big, tall, rangy fighter. He's 6'3". He's fighting someone in Liam Williams at 5'10". He's coming off a fantastic run of performances where I think he's had something like 12k wins in a row out of his 18 wins. So, he's been set up tonight on Saturday to showcase his skills and showcase himself to the public. There's not much going on in the boxing world this coming Saturday. So, he's got a real opportunity to make a statement for himself. So, I do think he's been managed well. And they've managed to almost bring his career on quite well. There's been a few hiccups along the way. He took some bad press when he fought Bradley Skeet. But it was an interesting learning fight for him, because when he fought Bradley Skeet, he'd probably won every minute of every round.
Well, that was, I was going to say, Chris, that was my next question. What did you make about that win? There you go. Against Bradley Skeet. What did you make of that?
I thought it was a good performance ultimately, and I think he actually took the backlash of social media, because what you actually seen was, yes, for sure he hit Bradley Skeet when he was down, and he probably hit him down twice when Bradley was on a knee. But if you watch the fight back, Bradley Skeet was actually under pressure at the time, and he was actually looking for a knee. So for Sheeraz to actually come in and actually throw the punches, yes, his momentum was there, and he was very, very late. And when he threw the final punch, excuse me, but did it swing the momentum of the fight? Yeah, I know Simon Jordan, say on TalkSport, had a lot to say about it at the time. I actually thought the momentum had already swung, and I actually thought Steve Gray gave enough time for Bradley Skeet to recover. And when Hamzah Sheeraz came in for the finish, if you actually notice in the 9th round when it does actually finish, Bradley Skeet just gives a kind of nod of acknowledgement. He was finished.
He knew. He knew. People, like I said, there was big backlash behind it. A lot of people thought he should have been disqualified. So.
I think in professional boxing, what you've got to remember, the heat of the moment, the guys are in there, they're fighting, and their testosterone's high, their adrenaline's high. And when an opponent goes down, it's not sometimes for you to kind of have the vision to see, is his knee on the ground? Is he actually, touching down with a glove? All you can see is there's an opportunity for me to hit someone, so they take it. And I think in a split second, yes, we can watch it back and TNT or BT Sports, as it was at the time, can slow it down and we can all make judgments on it. But they've got a split second to make a decision when they're already in the momentum and when they're already fighting. So I think the correct thing, which could have happened in the fight, was they took a 5-minute break, which they ultimately probably did. Steve Gray takes a point off, and then they get back fighting. Skeet was asked if he wanted to continue. He said yes, he's a fighting man. But as I say, for me, the telling thing was, at the end of the fight, there was no uproar from the corner and such. Immediately, and Bradley Skeet gave that nod of acknowledgement, which if you're a fighter, you can say, he's saying there, I know I was beat. I had nothing left. You did well. So I think it was the right call and handled correctly.
Yeah. Will Liam Williams be Sheeraz's toughest fight to date, do you think?
On paper, I would agree with that statement, Steve. In the ring, I've got a funny feeling it won't turn out that way. I think his toughest opponent will be Skeet, in terms of his career progression and how we ultimately view this at the end of the Liam Williams fight. I think Williams is tailor-made for him at this point in time. I almost feel sorry for Liam Williams, because having seen him a number of times in person, having seen him train, he's a fantastic boxer. But for me, I always thought he was better at like middleweight or super welter, as they call it now. And, when you look at his performances, say against Liam Smith or Mark Heffron, he was doing fantastically well around that kind of 2017 to 2019 time. But his career just kind of stalled a little bit, and it was almost like they were looking for the big fights. He then had to wait a little bit of time to get Andre, and then he fought Chris Eubank.
Junior.
And when he fought Chris Eubank, he was destroyed. He was down 4 times, and Eubank just did with him what he wanted.
Yeah, I was quite surprised with that fight. I honestly thought it was a 50-50 fight and was actually tipping Williams to win that. But
right.
What do I know about boxing?
What do any of us know about boxing? But I think for me, since the Eubank performance, he's probably only fought like once a year, and he's only and in the last 12 months, Liam Williams has only had 1 round of action. Now, for a kid that was so talented and has held the British title at 2 different weights, it almost feels wrong to be writing him off here. But I think what you've got is all the size advantages, all the momentum, the power is going to sit with Sheeraz. So I think that all the benefits and all the positives sit with Sheeraz in this fight. And I just think Liam Williams has almost been served up for him. And it feels disrespectful to say, because I remember watching Liam Williams fight Mark Heffron, as I said, on the Carol Frotz, Josh Warrington undercard, and I said, what a great performance that was. I feel sorry for him as a nearly man, because you're a boxing man as well, Steve. You'll remember when he fought Liam Williams and got cut, Gary Lockett made the wrong call. He stopped the fight. Whereas if it had went to points because the punches had been cut back, the cuts had been caught by punches, he would have went to the decision, and he would have won the fight. So I almost kind of feel sorry for Liam Williams in a way. I think his career has stalled and petered because he's not been marketable.
Yeah. What did you make of Liam Williams retiring? Obviously, he put that threat in, and then obviously he changed his mind. What did you make of that?
I think, again, a hard career. He probably wasn't getting any opportunities, because he's right on the cusp of, is he a nearly man? He's good enough to beat anybody in Britain, probably at the kind of British level at the time when he did say he was going to retire. But nobody wanted to fight him. And then he had that performance against Eubank, and that would have been disheartening for anybody, because I think pure boxing men like Liam Williams, and he's a hard man, look at someone like Chris Eubank and say, this guy's been spoon-fed, he's not a proper boxer. I'm sick of hearing people say that Eubank isn't a proper boxer, because he's been in the game since he was 15. He's been in it. He's had some fantastic fights. So losing to someone who you don't think should be in the ring with you probably mentally plays with you. And I think that a defeat, such as a heavy defeat like that, down 4 times, as we say, probably just affected him a little bit more than he thought.
What do you think the mindset's going to be for this fight then? Because obviously, when fighters talk about retiring and giving up, getting into a fight, it's not a good thing, is it? If you ask me.
Not at all. And I think his mindset will be, because I've seen him before and followed his whole career, as we all have, his mindset will be, I can win this, but can he actually win it? He is a big hitter, Liam Williams. He's got 20 knockouts in 25 fights. But again, I think his best days were at super welterweight. So can he actually get to Sheeraz? Yes, he can, because Sheeraz, when he is in control, he can sometimes get a little bit lazy. And I think we've seen that against Skeet. He got a little bit untidy. We also seen when he fought Torres that when he was tagged, he was tagged because he threw a jab and just left his hand out a little bit too long, and Torres was able to come in and counter that. So, I think with him, if he's getting lazy or if he's in control and he's not shifting momentum, then Liam Williams could get to him. But I think ultimately the range of Hamzah Sheeraz height advantage is going to be significant. I think that he'll just manage to hold Liam Williams off. Mindset, no doubt about it, Liam Williams comes to win every time.
Yeah, sure. I was going to say, quote from Frank Warren, I want to read this right. It would be a classic collision of youth versus experience, a young fighter on the up against one who's looking to prove he still belongs. Do you still see that the same?
Absolutely. Timing's everything. Timing's everything. And, how many times have we seen in boxing that different trajectory, one's on the way up, one's on the way down, and they just nail it correctly. And I think Frank's got a track record of doing that with his fighters. He just keeps them bubbling along, wins minor titles, and then all of a sudden he gets an opportunity and he explodes them. Eddie's done something similar as well with his fighters. But I think for this one, he's got a name and he's able to say, here we've got someone that's been on Sky. He's fought Demetrius Andre, he's fought Liam Williams. He might not have won. He's a two-weight British champion, and they can sell Sheeraz on the back of that particular fight. So, but they've also got someone which they won't say, he's only had one round of action in 12 months. He'd only had one fight in the previous year before that. He'd been knocked down 4 times against Eubank. He'd been beaten by Liam Smith quite handily in the rematch. So Williams, great fighter. Why would he retire? He probably just wasn't getting opportunity in the purses that he felt that he deserved. And when you fought Andre on American TV, I'm sure he would have got a 6-figure purse. And then to then be offered a fight on an undercard for 10 grand, 20 grand, you would turn around and say, do I need this anymore?
It's a good point. If Sheeraz wins, how far do you think he could possibly go?
He's a big middleweight, isn't he? First of all, I was looking at him and I was thinking, are you a true middleweight? And by that I mean, are you someone that's able to go up the weights, or where does he look comfortable at? And at the moment, I think he looks very comfortable at middleweight. His body's long, his body's narrow, his arms are. He doesn't have muscle mass as such, but he does have very, very lean muscle. Kind of a little bit like when you remember the early Thomas Hearns down at welterweight. So I think at the moment middleweight is where he should stay. And he's probably hitting middleweight at a very interesting time, because we've not got any superstars at middleweight at the current time, have we? We've mentioned someone like Liam Smith earlier on. Well, he just got beat by Chris Eubank. So if Sheeraz wins this fight, that would be a lovely fight for him to have next, someone like Liam Smith. But I think that Sheeraz possibly could go to proper world level or just under world level, because there's no one else there at the time, at this current time, at middleweight. Would I put him in with a Zanibek or whatever? Probably not. I'd keep him as far away from him as possible. But certainly someone, as I say, like a Liam Smith, maybe even an Amel Williams would be an interesting fight. If we're going to do the 5, if we're going to do the 5 for 5, why not? There's an Eddie Hearn fighter against a Frank fighter. I like that.
That's a great shout, to be honest with you. And I think you're going back to your thing you mentioned here, timing. The timing could be great for Sheeraz, couldn't it, really?
Yeah. Because if you take a few years back, we had Gennady Golovkin dominating the middleweight division, and all of a sudden we just don't have that level. The Charlos don't seem to be overly interested in defending their belts. So at one point we're going to get, I think, all the titles coming back to the table. And at that point, Frank Warren's got a great relationship with the WBO, always has done, so he's got an opportunity potentially there. The IBF are very good on mandatory positions. Sheeraz has obviously got the WBC silver belt, which he's defending this current Saturday against Williams. So he's managing to get himself into positions where he's just sitting there behind the pecking order. And that's why, again, I think Saturdays is a great decision. Get him in against the name, make him look good, and then you can progress onto the world stage. He'll have a world ranking with all the major bodies after Saturday, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's probably the main aim, isn't it, to get that world ranking there. How do you see, I know you touched on it a bit earlier, but how do you see the fight going?
I would say Liam Williams coming out, and he's always pumped for a fight, isn't he? He's always aggressive, and he's got that kind of Welsh mentality where they come out and they think they can take on everybody. And I think that kind of Welsh rugby union type mentality will come out in him, and we'll probably see a good Liam Williams maybe for a couple of rounds. But ultimately, I think that Hamzah Sheeraz, the height at 6'3" against 5'10", the solid punch and the jabs, as long as he doesn't get sloppy and as long as he doesn't get caught, I could see him being able to pick Williams off at range with that stunning big right hand. When he fought Torres, after he got knocked down himself, he came back up and he tidied himself up and he scored a knockdown with the left. He scored a knockdown with the right. He's got two-handed power. And ultimately, I think that straight punching, discipline will be the key to the key Saturday, and the key to him winning. And I think he can win quite handily. And I
Yeah.
don't think after the first few rounds, and I may be wrong if I'm saying this, I don't think after the first few rounds we'll see Williams in the fight overly competitively.
Okay, crunch time then. Prediction. How's it going to end?
Sheeraz stoppage around about 6 to 8.
6 to 8. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's sort of mid later round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Steve? How do you see it?
Yeah, I would say the same. I'll say mid to late stoppage. I think Williams, he will be aggressive, but I think Sheeraz would be just too strong and too, like I said, too big for him, really. So too strong and too big, and just wear him down. What did you think of the rest of the undercard there, Chris, as well?
The undercard itself, it's one which sometimes you look at undercards and you think, is that a card that I would want to go to myself? And, on this one, I'd probably pass it up. There's a lot of young fighters coming through. The main thing is the comeback of Anthony Yard. And I think for Anthony, as he keeps on that winning momentum, it's interesting because what we've just seen is Callum Smith fighting Berbatov, and I thought Yardy did a better performance. So again, I think that's where TNT will sell that particular performance by Yard on Saturday night. They'll be like, this is a guy who went out there, gave him all hell, probably did better than our other fighter. Can we build this in again, maybe to another one in the 5-on-5? Could we get, Yardy versus Smith? So I can see them trying to build that coming through. We've also got Sam Noakes versus Louis Sylvester for the Commonwealth belt and at lightweight, and that's a good fight as well. A nice little domestic fight. Both are very even in terms of records. I think it's 12-0 and 13-0. So, if these guys can come out and put on a good performance and just kind of underpin the undercard, I think that one looks like it'll be a kind of 12-rounder for me. But those are probably the only two noteworthy fights which I could see. Yeah. But other than that, it's just people, who are coming through. And Frank likes to bring his fighters through and still put on big long cards that run to midnight, doesn't he?
Midnight. Prepare yourself for a late night. So perhaps maybe. We always do a couple of ending questions for you, Chris, and a couple of them has actually changed. But this one is probably more relevant than ever. Tweet of the week goes to Rob Boxing Shrew. His comment about Ben Whittaker. I don't mind the showboating, but when it comes against someone who's not remotely on your level, what do you think? And again, this Saturday was a massive highlight. I done a tweet on it. It went crazy. What do you think of Ben Whittaker?
So, firstly, out of the ring, fantastic lad. One, and this is the contradiction of Ben Whittaker, which I don't get. I sent you a picture on Saturday night, I think maybe, or one of the nights, and we had this quick conversation about Ben Whittaker, and I sent you a picture of me and him and said, "What are you doing to me, asking me a question about Ben?" So that pressure there, Chris. Yeah. So that picture that I sent you was myself and Ben having dinner last April, and I said to him on that dinner, "Why do you showboat?" I genuinely said that question to him, and he said,
"This is great."
And he said, "Do you know what? I don't know." He said, "I don't plan to do it. I go into the ring, and it just comes out of me." He says, "I don't do it in training. I don't do it when I'm thinking about, how I visualize the fight to occur." He says, "But when I'm in there, it just came out." So as we sat and had that dinner, I was speaking to him and his dad, and we were just sitting talking about it. And he is the most humblest character that I've ever met in boxing. He posed for pictures with everybody. He talked boxing with everybody. He talked about how much he wanted to win the WBC belt. He talked about the history of the light heavyweight division. He's a good student. But then he goes and does something like that. And I must admit, it really surprised me that night just how humble he actually was. And to then see him doing it again on Saturday, it genuinely surprised me. I thought he went too far on Saturday. But when you see him in the ring and you see the uppercuts he's thrown, and then you see what he is trying to do, and he's moving his head and he's ducking away from the punches that his opponent was throwing, he looked phenomenal. Even when he was throwing the punches and when he was showboating, he looked phenomenal.
Is it entertainment though, or is it disrespectful of your opponent? That's where the split is.
I think he's having fun in there. And who are we to say you shouldn't have fun in there to anybody? To the boxing purists, it's disrespectful because you think, here's a guy that's completely overmatched and he's belittling the chat by doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of the coin is Ben Whittaker is so talented. Why shouldn't he showcase his skill? If Sugar Ray Leonard did it against Marvin Hagler, everybody loved it. Why shouldn't Ben get to do it? I think he just went a little bit too far on Saturday night, and I think the referee actually handled it well, because every time he did it, and he thought that Ben had went that little bit too far, he pulled him aside and kind of gave him a little ticking off, but he still did it. I think he'll do it in his next fight again, but it's one of these things. As he steps up levels and as he gets into a fight, he can't do it because it leaves his chin up in the air.
Do you think there would be less and less showboating then as the level of opponent increases?
Got to be, because the one thing about Ben, and this was quite an interesting thing which came out over the dinner as well. When he signed with Boxer, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this and gives me a digging over text for this, he said to me, when I signed with Boxer, I made sure it wasn't a plus tickets deal. So he knows that he's not a big, massive ticket seller in his own right. So he's got to try and create some media around him. So the deal he's got with Boxer currently, which he told me, is just, I get paid for my appearances and my purses. And his career's slowed a little bit. He's had an injury and he needs to try and get some momentum back into his career. I think he's being quite savvy in terms of what he's doing, but he just needs to calm it down a little bit.
Well, one thing he did guarantee after Saturday night is the publicity, the attention after it. It created loads. It's all over social media, absolutely massive. So he must be thinking, if I carry on doing this, more people will come to see me fight. They may have that mentality of they want to see me lose, but at least they're coming and watching me fight anyway. So it's kind of a good thing, isn't it, for him?
Yeah, and if you remember 2 fights ago, what he came in dressed like Nazid.
Yeah,
he came in the Adidas top, which was the leopard print, the Adidas shorts. It was almost a homage to Naz. And he'd said, and he'd said, "I'm going to do this." People thought the same thing about Naz, didn't they, Steve? They wanted to see him win. They wanted to see him lose. They wanted to see him get put on the floor. They loved it when one of your heroes, Barrera, smacked him into the ring post. Ben Whittaker is following his own path. He's creating headlines, maybe for the wrong reasons, but he's doing something which
doing the right stuff.
He's doing something which no other person's doing at the moment.
People will, I guarantee, even after Saturday, they're going to tune in next time. They'll want to see what he's up to, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
But one thing we can't underwrite is a phenomenal talent. Forget the showboating and just watch the performance, the movement, the jabs, the uppercuts in particular, his foot movement, his head movement. He's phenomenal talent.
Yeah, definitely. We were going to talk about another fight, what was supposed to be happening next weekend. And then all of a sudden that happened. So we're not going to be talking about, we are going to be talking about it a bit. What do you make of the cut, the head guard, the sparring, the elbow? What do you make of it, Chris?
Immediately after seeing it, the conspiracist theory of me thought, oh, that cut looks very clean. There's no rugged edges to the cut. And, you almost think, what's happened there? Is there something there? But then after 3 seconds of thinking that, you just think, do you know what? No man is going to give away a guaranteed 60 million purse or whatever he was getting. Tyson Fury's a fighting man. I've seen the sparring. Do I believe that it was caused by that? I've got my doubts whether it was that caused it, but do I believe it was a legitimate injury? Yeah, I do. Tyson's built himself up with silly statements, hasn't he? People have never forgiven him for the castrated boar meat statement. They've never forgiven him for, retiring so many times and saying different things, which are just silly. So whenever he says something, it gets press. But whenever he says something, people instantly disbelieve him. As I say, that was my initial reaction. Oh my God, that cut looks too clean, And then we all think back to Rocky going, "Cut me, Mick, cut me," and a boxer wouldn't do that to himself.
No,
he wouldn't do that to himself.
I was going to say I was just frustrated. I was so looking forward to the fight, like most fans, and then something like this happens. They have proposed 17th of May for it. Do you think that's realistic? Do you?
Well, we're not a great deal of time away, but I heard someone on the radio making a great comparison, and I think it was actually Frank Warren himself when he talked about Rumble in the Jungle and George Foreman getting cut initially in Kinshasa, and he stayed there, and a cut can heal, and the one thing people have got to remember, he was cut badly against Wallen. The cut then required 47 stitches. This looks in a slightly different place, but what what happens when you get stitched is, and I can tell you from the scan over my own eye, is what the stitching element of it will be a little bit better and tougher than your skin was previously, but underneath it and over it will be slightly easier to get damaged.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happened here. I think there's been a tear in the skin there by Tyson Fury. It's opened underneath the cut where Warren was.
It wasn't
and I think absolutely, and it's a legitimate injury. It didn't look jagged, as we said earlier on, Steve. It looked clean. I think that cut will seal within 3 months, and hopefully that date which they've proposed will be a date which can actually be met. And I think the Saudis have done well to stick by the fight and still promote it. The promo which they did and released 2 days earlier was phenomenal. So I'm thinking.
Well, that made it worse, I think, Chris, because everyone's thinking, oh, look at this promotion, it's going to be awesome. 2 weeks away, we're nearly there. Unified heavyweight champion, what every fan's been waiting for, and then this happens. You're like, ugh.
But it's boxing. We've seen it before. I'm old enough to remember when Mike Tyson hurt his rib when he should have fought Evander Holyfield. I thought my world had fallen apart because I was just a teenager and I wanted Mike to come back and get his title. So it happens. Injuries have happened all throughout sport. Yeah.
But we should know by now, shouldn't we? As fans, we should know. It is boxing. Things happen right up into the last minute. We've had fights cancelled. What people have been looking forward to. But we've got to take it. But it was so close, and obviously we want it to happen. And it's given another date, May the 17th. And you're thinking, puts doubts in your mind again. Is it going to happen? But hopefully, fingers crossed, it will.
Yeah. It's too big not to happen, isn't it? And I think with the money on display, it would be dreadful if it didn't happen. Could you imagine the context if the Saudis have put all this money into building up the biggest fight in the world and it doesn't happen? Would they lose their love for the sport? Would they get annoyed with us as boxing? So I think it needs to happen.
Yeah, sure. Brilliant. Well, that's it for this week, Chris. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining me. Again, everyone, please support the channel the best you can. With likes, subscriptions, comments, and obviously enjoy the fights on Saturday. Get your beers and snacks in if that's your plan. And appreciate your time, Chris. Thanks for coming on.
Welcome. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Chris.
Welcome. Good.